get ourselves together, unite, and try to speak with one voice.
Distinguished guest for today, the Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of UNAIDS, Madam Winnie Byanyima, the First Lady of Ekiti State, Erelu Bisifayemi, my colleague, the UN FPA Country Representative, Ms. Ula Muller, and the UNAIDS Country Representative, Mr. Erasmus Mora, who's missing for the moment, but good. Oh, okay, good. Good afternoon. In a moment, we'll go around the table to introduce ourselves. I want to first of all wish everyone a happy International Women's Day. My name is Comfort Lamptey. I'm the UN Women Country Representative here in Nigeria. Thank you, first of all. Thank you all for making the time to be here. I know you're all very busy people. This is an opportunity for us to continue the commemoration of this very important day. But actually, we also convened this meeting specifically because we have a special guest in our midst today. We have, as I said, the Executive Director of UNAIDS here with us, who's undertaken a very timely visit to Nigeria as the agency seeks to launch its new strategy, its new 5-year strategy, which is very much underpinned by a drive to end the inequalities that have been fueling HIV, with a goal to ending AIDS by 2030. And it's a strategy that is also very much people-centered and emphasizes prevention of HIV. As some of you may know, Nigeria is the 4th largest HIV epidemic globally. And as with the COVID-19 pandemic, HIV has a woman's face here in Nigeria, as the prevalence is more than double for women than for men. Of the 1.8 million estimated people living with HIV, women are 1.7% compared to 0.8% in terms of the prevalence. And particularly for the category of women living between the ages of 20 to 24 years, the prevalence is 3 times that of men. So indeed, it does have a woman's face. I think this visit, and the Executive Director herself will speak more about it, but it's also an opportunity to position Nigeria as the next big HIV turnaround country here in Africa. But we are also very lucky that she's undertaken this visit on International Women's Day, and it's an opportunity for her to also express solidarity with Nigerian women as we mark this day, and to share and exchange experiences and strategies to address some of the deep-seated inequalities that still plague us. I will say a few words about Madam Byanyima's very impressive CV, and then we will go around the table to introduce ourselves. So she is, as I said, the Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of UNAIDS. And before joining UNAIDS, she served as Executive Director of Oxfam International. She's also served in politics. She's been elected for 3 terms and served 11 years in the parliament of her country, Uganda. She also has a long-standing track record with the intergovernmental institutions, namely the African Union, where she headed the Directorate for Gender and Development, and also in UNDP, where she also served as Director for Gender and Development. And she has co-chaired the World Economic Forum. She has a lot of honors to her name, well earned. And what I think when I first heard about Madam Byanyima, what really impressed me was that she actually graduated with a degree in aeronautical engineering, which is quite something. So a very accomplished professional women leader, and we're very proud to have you here with us for International Women's Day. Before we get right into our conversation, I think it'll be very important for us to know who's around the table. So we're going to do a quick round of introductions, and then we'll get straight to the conversation. And I'm very honored to request our dear sister, Her Excellency, Madam Obi Ezekwesile, to start us off with a round of introductions, and we'll go around that way. Thank you.
My name is Obi Ezekwesile, and I came out here because, Winnie, if you ever doubted that I love you, now you know that I do, right? Because I wasn't meant, my schedule couldn't carry this, but I just had to come. And so I am delighted to welcome you to Nigeria and to see you in this position at UNAIDS. Like you and I discussed, you're going to make that institution really come alive. And so welcome. I run what is known as the Africa Economic Development Policy Initiative, and I have recently, together with a couple of other people, started the School of Politics, Policy and Governance, and it's a deliberate approach to training new leaders for Africa. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kiki Mordi. I am an investigative journalist. I'm a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker, and I'm also the founder of a platform called Document Women. It's a platform that is dedicated to telling women's stories through all forms of media. So yes, thank you very much. I'm so delighted to be here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Binta Max Binije. I sit on the board of Access Pension Fund Custodian as an independent director. I'm a management consultant. I run a small boutique consulting firm. But I also sit on the Executive Council of the Women in Management, Business and Public Service, WIMBIS, on whose behalf I'm here today.
Good afternoon, esteemed women. I am Rachel Itionzu. I led a network of organizations of 160 NGOs in Benue State, and I was the chairman for 4 years. That was the first of its kind, a woman being in that position. So I'm blessed to be here, and I have my NGO that I'm running now. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Buki Williams. I'm the Executive Director of Education as a Vaccine. We are a nonprofit organization that works to advance the right to health and freedom from all forms of violence for adolescents and young people in Nigeria. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Yinka Falola Anoemwa. I lead Gender, Human Rights and Care Services for the National Agency for the Control of AIDS, NACA, in Nigeria. We work around policy, guidelines, capacity building in the national HIV/AIDS response, particularly for women and vulnerable populations, to remove all forms of barriers and improve access to services for them. Thank you. Happy Women's Day to everyone.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name's Emma Foles, and I work in the Executive Office at UNAIDS, and I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Salma Ibrahim Anas. I am a public health physician, and I've worked in several places, including the UN. I'm back to the Federal Ministry of Health as a director and head of Family Health Department. So essentially, my job is trying to see how we improve the health of women, children, adolescents, including the elderly. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ekaite Judy Tumo. I'm a global disability rights activist and founder of Family Centered Initiative for Challenged Persons, and also the national president of the Joint National Association of Persons with Disabilities.
My name is Paula Munderi. I feel really privileged to be in this room here and to be in Nigeria today on International Women's Day. I am a physician by background. I am old enough to have seen the beginning of the HIV epidemic in my country, Uganda. God willing, I'll be here to see the end in 2030. I'm privileged to work for Ms. Byanyima as her Director for HIV Prevention in Geneva.
Hello everyone, my name is Nkechi Oguchi. I'm the CEO of Ventures Park, and we support startups that are solving critical problems in Africa. We do this through funding. We've funded a number of companies, including Paystack, PiggyVest, MDAS, and a few others. We also educate founders on how to build sustainable businesses, and it's really amazing being amongst great women like these as well.
Thank you. My name is Rhoda Prevail Theodore. I'm the country vice president, national president of International Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA Nigeria, with a mandate to protecting, promoting, and preserving the rights of women and children. We stand to challenge all discriminatory laws against women. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wasu Joyce Adewale. I work with the International Community of Women Living with HIV West African region, and I'm the present African NGO delegate to the UNSPCB, and I work with the resource mobilization lead of the parks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Azomta Reginald. I'm the National Coordinator of Association of Women Living with HIV in Nigeria, and also Director of International Community of Women Living with HIV West Africa. ICW is a global organization with 10 regions existing. In Sub-Saharan Africa, we have 4 regions. Eastern Africa, Southern Africa, Western Africa, and also Central Africa. And Winnie is very familiar with our network, and I'm happy to see Dr. Bisi Fayemi here because she supported the organization to survive when she was in African Women Development Fund. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aisha Yusufu. I am an active Nigerian citizen, and I challenge the status quo. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to use the last child's privileges with the microphone in my hand as the last to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Eleanor Madinobi. I'm the International President of the Medical Women's International Association. The association is the longest existing association of physicians in the world. Women who survived the Spanish flu started the association. I also wear another hat as the steering committee chair of a coalition called the Every Woman Treaty, advocating for a treaty, a global treaty to end violence against women and girls. With the last child's privileges, Your Excellencies, I haven't quite learnt how to be in 2 places at a time, and I want to crave your indulgence as I will be going to a media interview shortly to quickly say that I had the opportunity of working with UNIFEM, as it was then, on Nigeria's first gender strategy on HIV and AIDS. At that time, I was working with widows who were forced into the leveret, being passed on to the next surviving male, and being forced, especially in the southeast of Nigeria, to produce children posthumously. If they didn't have children, or if they didn't have boy children, they would then procreate in the communities in order to produce the male child. And that was my introduction to issues of HIV and AIDS at the time that formed the strategy that we drew up at the time. I want us to remember our precious grandmothers who filled the gap when parents died on account of HIV and AIDS. And as a physician myself, I have not been satisfied with government's responses around the COVID-19 pandemic in a way that they have left out the populations that are living with HIV and AIDS in their response. And I know that the experts here will ensure that those gaps are filled. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eleanor. I think I've given you 2 of your 3 minutes. Thank you. We'll just start straight with the conversation. And so I will be inviting all of us to just take 2 or 3 minutes to actually express the points, as I call you. Just to let you also know at the outset that this event is being live streamed. Now, that's not to say that we can't be open. I think we can be as open as possible, but just so that you all are aware of that. I'm going to start with some of our colleagues who are representing the health sector around the table, and perhaps start with Dr. Yinka. Given the high HIV prevalence among women in Nigeria, can you share in 2 minutes some of the perspectives on the gendered impact of the pandemic as you see it in the country right now? Do we have the mic for Dr. Yinka?
Thank you, ma'am, for throwing the first ball at me. And I think Dr. Eleanor actually did that by pointing out to some of the gaps that she could feel around HIV and COVID-19. Yeah, I want to first put it on the table, the population of the country. We know it's quite huge. But despite that, I think we have jump-started some interventions to respond to that. I think Azomta is here to testify to that. But basically, we know that the issues around gender-based violence have actually impacted everyone's life, especially around COVID-19. And a lot around power relations is still very strife in the community, with a lot of traditional and sociocultural, I would say, misconceptions. Because I will tell you, recently I still know of someone very close to me who died of HIV without me even knowing. As in somebody very close to me. So there's still a lot of silence, a lot of born out of stigma and discrimination. And this is very strong for us, especially as now we are working at the level of HIV is normalized within the health response. And this is a very big issue for us, especially those of us who are working around gender, human rights, and care of the vulnerable persons with disability. We know it's when a disease is normalized, you expect that the structure, the system will take care of all of what needs to be done, especially when it is health related. And we have a very strong, the health sector is strong enough to take it in. But we know HIV is not just health related issue. There are a lot of social issues around it. In fact, for me, the social issues are bigger than the health component. And those components are still very weak. People don't still have information, especially the young people. They don't have information because the history we might be saying here is very new to so many of them, and history is not something that we are very good at any longer within our sector. So a lot of young people don't even know the history of HIV and how we got to where we are, and we are normalizing it, not too much information around it. When you wear T-shirts around HIV, people would even stop you and say, does it still exist? So it's a lot that we need to do to go back to actually help us end the epidemic by 2030 as we are projecting. But one thing I know is Nigeria is actually doing a lot we might not be feeling it so much because we are normalizing the response to HIV. Because the current data is showing that we even in fact, I think the best country in containing in the response and listing more people to HIV within the COVID-19 response, while we had lockdown, when so many countries' attention were on HIV, okay. Nigeria was doing so much on COVID. Nigeria was still doing so much for HIV. So we have a lot of things coming up. At the same time, we still need to step back to pick up all of those social issues within the communities around stigma, around discrimination, around empowerment, power relationship, economic weakness for women that we need to do a lot around. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yinka. And I want to perhaps turn to some of our representatives from the Association of Women Living with HIV/AIDS. I think there are two representatives here. If one of you can also pick up on the point around the information gaps, and how can we also bridge that going forward and to change this approach whereby we have tended to normalize HIV. Would one of you like to say a couple of words on that, build up on that?
There are existing gaps in the information around HIV response, and it has to do with programs and policies, because adolescent girls and boys in schools do not have access to comprehensive information. And Nigeria, as it stands right now, do not implement the comprehensive sexuality education where adolescent girls and boys could have access to that comprehensive. The only information they are giving them in school regarding HIV prevention is abstinence. The FLH education does not include information about condom use, about post-exposure prophylaxis, and other prevention methods around HIV. So the gaps around the information exist mainly on policies and the programs that we implement. The civil society organization works at the grassroots to provide this information. But whereas where we have COVID-19 now, how do adolescent girls and young women have access to this information? Technology. Does this technology reach out to reach communities? No. So there's still information gap, it still exists, and there's a lot to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to also pick up on one issue that Dr. Yinka mentioned, also around the issue of GBV, gender-based violence as well. And maybe I want to invite Aderonke Bello on that issue, because I think you've also been one person who has been working to highlight GBV prevention issues using very, let's say, unconventional approaches as well. Can you say something more about some of that work and how we can expand that going forward?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, we have been working on GBV, and at FAME Foundation, we believe so much in using sport, which is a universal language in Nigeria, to create awareness, to make, to campaigns, to advocate for causes, especially for gender equality. Okay, when we talk about GBV now, most of the perpetrators are the men. I'm not ruling out the women. And if you look around, you'll find a male supporting one sports team, either football, basketball, badminton, or name them. So this is why we as an organization say to ourselves that Nigeria is a heterogeneous country, and we believe so much in our religion, tribe, where we come from, and all of that. But the only thing that unifies us in this country is sport. When Super Eagles when they're playing, we all forget where we come from. We flag the Nigerian flag. When Super Falcons are playing and all of that. This is why we said, okay, this universal language, this unifying factor, this factor that the men love so much, we're going to use it, we're going to engage it to fight GBV. We're going to use it for gender equality as well. So this is why we have been going out there during COVID-19, and we all know that the rate of GBV was really high at the time. So we went out, despite COVID-19. Of course, we observe all the precautionary measures. We have people that are the devils. We went out there. We use sports aggressively, passionately to advocate for GBV. So I think everybody should join us in this advocacy, try and use initiative, things that are not really like, yeah, we have conferences every time, we sit down on the round table. What about on the field? Practical and very aggressive, passionate approaches to fight GBV. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I was also informed that we have some guests joining us online. Unfortunately, I don't have, I just have the names, and I do want to acknowledge them. Dr. Oremedi Orekurin from the Flying Doctors, and she's joining us online just in time for her question. We have Madam Eugenia Abu also joining us online, and Dr. Kemi Da Silva joining us online. So perhaps I can, whilst we're on the subject of GBV, I would want to address a question to Dr. Kemi Da Silva, if you can hear me. As a medical practitioner who's working with victims of gender-based violence, what are the critical gaps in your view, that needs to be addressed still in order to improve our response mechanisms in the country?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm assuming everybody can hear me and hopefully see me. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I would, of course, like to welcome the amazing panel in front of me, a platform in front of me. To respond to your question, as you rightly stated, the practicing obstetrician and gynecologist, it's clearly apparent that there is a gap with regards to the healthcare delivery system when it comes to specialist services, specifically to survivors. The majority of the reason, I would say, is the lack of infrastructure, available infrastructure in many states across Nigeria. We have a limited number of sexual assault referral centers with adequately trained staff that can attend to the needs of survivors and run the necessary forensic examinations, and of course the counseling that comes with the trauma of these events. I think the essential services with regards to all the other ancillary care that comes with survivor treatment, shelter, accommodation, having access to these, again, is always an issue when it comes to addressing the healthcare and the well-being of these women. So I think we need to look into expanding on providing capacity building for the available healthcare facilities in many of these states, and then additional training so that not just physicians, but other health professionals can be equipped with a toolkit to address the needs of these young girls and women. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kemi, and for keeping it very concise as well. I just want to also, even as we look at GBV from the response side, which you've well articulated the issues, I think there are a lot of organizations also that are working around prevention. And one such organization is the Stand to End Rape, STARE. And I know that Oluwaseun is online, Ayodeji is online, she's the Executive Director. Could you also perhaps shed some light in terms of the ways in which we can also strengthen this work on preventing rape culture in Nigeria? I wanted to throw a question at Ekaite. What does inclusion truly represent for people living with disability in a time like this?
We might begin to look at what brings about exclusion. So when we begin to look at what has excluded us in the first place, then we can begin to unpack how we can be included. So for us, inclusion would mean pulling down the barriers. Absolutely. Taking your eyes off the impairment, recognizing that their impairment is not denying the fact. But how does this people with impairment interact with the barriers that they meet within the society that limit their effective participation? So inclusion for us is pulling down those barriers, opening up the spaces, making it a little bit safe for us to come in. So when we begin to understand what barriers they are currently, then we can begin to, talk of inclusion and pulling it down. So taking it forward in terms of knowledge gaps. Everyone has talked about knowledge gap, but knowledge gap for us could mean something a little bit slightly different. Okay, it could be that the content is too heavy for the kind of impairment that we face. So imagine a woman with a learning disabilities, and you're bringing that load of information about HIV and AIDS. What would that translate to her? So how do we now begin to look at the content and the design of the messaging so that we can bring it up to the level that people with different kinds of impairment can relate and also understand? So to the supply side actors, how are you treating disabilities, and what are the tools that you're using for inclusion? We have these very specific tools that we call the twin track approach, where you see disability as a standalone thematic issue and a cross-cutting issue. So if we take it as a cross-cutting issue, how do you design your programs? How do you bring in people with disability to be beneficiary of those programs? And if it's going to be a standalone thematic issue, did you bring them at the design stage? Are you designing for them or with them? So for us, inclusion means just pulling down those barriers, but we just wish that space could be safe enough, open enough for us to come, sit and talk. So collectively, we can design programs that can bring inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very powerful. Pulling down those barriers and also packaging information in a way that is accessible to different people. Thank you. I want to turn to Dr. Ola Brown. Many of you know that she's been doing some stellar work throughout the whole period of the pandemic in supporting increased testing on COVID-19. And I wanted to ask you if you could say something about how we can also address the issue of access. Now that we're all looking at the vaccines coming in, what do you see in terms of how do you see inequality to access playing out with respect to the vaccine distribution in Nigeria, and how can this be addressed?
Over the period of COVID-19, my company, the Flying Doctors Investment Company, has been working through mainly public-private partnerships to provide laboratory facilities, diagnostic facilities, and treatment facilities across the country. So we worked on three molecular labs in 2 different states, 2 isolation centers, and about 12 different diagnostic facilities in different states in Nigeria, so in 12 different states. Now, during that process, one of my major learning points was around the power of public-private partnerships and around the fact that when private sector financing, private sector expertise and efficiency, and private sector innovation, technological innovation, comes together with the resources of the public sector, you can really, really make a huge difference. In terms of vaccines, I think that there's a huge need to ensure that this is technologically driven, so that people that get the vaccines can actually be recorded and have a record of having gotten the vaccine. I think distribution, especially last mile distribution to rural areas, is something that the private sector excels at. Companies like Coca-Cola, pharmaceutical companies, for instance, get their products to some of the most remote parts of Nigeria. So I think that that's essential. And in terms of equity of access, I think it's important to prioritize the vulnerable first. I think it will be some time, realistically speaking, before every single person in Nigeria gets a vaccine. And I'm not sure whether, it is, or I'm saying, well, let me contextualize my statement first. Over 100,000 people, women, die in the process of pregnancy and childbirth every year in Nigeria. Nigeria has one of the highest under 5 mortality rates in the entire world. So more children die in Nigeria under the age of 5 years old than anywhere else in the world. Probably about 2,000 people, or just over, maybe 3,000 have died of COVID. So one of our biggest healthcare, it's not one of our major causes of mortality, or hasn't been in the past year. So I think that equitable access to vaccines is important, but I think we need to contextualize it in the situation where we are, where, you know, there's a lot more basic things that kill a lot more people in Nigeria. So we need to make sure that our financial resources are not skewed to what the priorities are in America or England, but they're actually skewed towards the problems that we're experiencing now that kill thousands of women and children every single year.
Thank you very much, and thank you for putting all of this into context. Yes, the problems are many, and so we need to actually look at our responses in a way that doesn't take away from those diseases and preventable, no doubt, that are killing more people every year. Thank you very much. I want to ask Dr. Salma, with everything that you've heard that has been shared so far on the health and related concerns, what should be the key priorities to address in building back better in the health sector in Nigeria?
Thank you so much. I've heard a lot, and I think we are still not on track in Nigeria in terms of prioritization. The main priority still remains the same: improving the health and well-being of women, children, and adolescents. We are still far from achieving that. I'm glad a lot of progress has been made in HIV/AIDS. I want to use that context. Improving access, prevention, access to ART. But even within the HIV/AIDS programming, the weakest link is on prevention of mother-to-child transmission, elimination, rather. Why is it so? Because you cannot achieve elimination of transmission of HIV from mother to child without having a platform that can deliver that. And that platform is the reproductive, maternal, newborn, and child health. It's still very, very weak. You cannot, women are not coming for ANC. One, because they don't believe in it. They don't have confidence what is available. The human resources are not there. The basic needs are not there. So if they don't form for ANC, how do they access testing and uptake of preventive services? So this is where we are lagging. We are still struggling. Little progress have been made, very, very slow progress. You know, if you look at the area of family planning, we are still struggling with family planning. I'm glad that we have the basket funding, which is anchored by UNFPA, and Nigeria is contributing to that basket funding in a very sluggish manner. We've been, I'm in government, but we need to tell ourselves the truth, because nobody is coming to tell us. It's only when we tell ourselves the truth, then we can make the desirable changes. Last week, I was within a meeting with my Honorable Minister of Health, and I noticed we are running up and down on the COVID pandemic. And I looked at the statistics, and it says it has killed almost 2,000 people in Nigeria in the last 1 year. And I looked at the maternal death, and I said it has killed over 50,000 women. And everybody was surprised. But nobody knew, is it something new? But this is what we've been singing. It has killed over 50,000 women. At least, not less than 30 newborn die out of every 1,000 deliveries. And then nobody is saying anything about it. So without taking so much of our time, is to say that this also has to do with gender inequality, imbalance, the issues of women are seen as issues of women. I was in the National Assembly a few weeks ago, just to defend a bill on maternal and perinatal death surveillance. But within even the health sector, we're not happy for that bill to come up. So what is wrong? There is no way we can fix it without getting our priorities right. And the priorities still remain the health and well-being of women, children and adolescents in Nigeria. That is the only way to go, whether we like it or not. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Salma. I want to maybe turn my next question to Madam Rhoda from Women in Law, FIDA. And I think perhaps changing gear a little bit and looking at some of our laws and the discriminatory laws, where do we need to make changes in terms of some of the existing laws that continue to perpetuate discrimination against women, both in terms of access to some of the services we're talking about, but also in terms of their participation in leadership more broadly?
Thank you very much. In terms of laws, the benchmark legislation that stands out against all forms of discrimination against women and girls, I believe, is the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. And apart from that, we have some state laws. Some states have passed laws on against female genital mutilation, early child marriage, and all that. But in it all, the problem we have is not such of laws, but implementation. Even the laws that we have in place, are they being effectively implemented? That is the issue. So the issue is getting our laws to be effectively implemented. I'm happy that during the COVID-19 last year, a state of emergency was declared. And from there, we have seen that quite a number of states who were reluctant to pass the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act were ready to do that. Some have passed, some are at a stage of getting passed. With the efforts of the Minister of Women Affairs, quite a number of states have passed the law, where I think we have about 21 or 22 so far. But the issue with law is effective implementation. So what do we do? And in FIDA, what we are doing is a lot of sensitization, awareness creation, and we've taken it to the grassroots, because it's one thing to have a law and it's another to get it to court to defend a matter. Some people are not even aware of the existence of the laws that we have. I can give an example, even within FCT, where the VAP law has been passed and it is the state where it is being operated. In some courts outside of the FCT, in some courts in the area councils, they are still using penal code and criminal code. And when you challenge them, they said they are not aware. And what are we talking about? We are talking about the police. So there's a need for us to continue to do a lot of sensitizations. Yes, there are laws that are discriminatory in nature. So we need to challenge and then take it up. I'm happy with what the feminist group is doing. I think we've gone to court to challenge some of these discriminatory laws and even to seek for interpretation of the Constitution that speaks outrightly against any form of discrimination, and yet we are being discriminated against. So the feminist group, through the National Women Trust Fund, has gone to court to seek for interpretation of these laws and even the national gender policy. We're seeking interpretation of those laws. So mainly the issue in Nigeria is that we have quite a number of laws that speak out against discrimination, but are they being effectively implemented? That is where the problem is. So we need to sensitize more on the need for effective implementation, and the stakeholders. I'm happy with Ekiti State. They've taken quite a proactive steps in ensuring that these laws are effectively implemented. So what we need to advocate for is for structures to be put in place to ensure that these laws that we have in place are effectively implemented. And for states that have not adopted those laws, they should do that. I think that is where we are.
Thank you so much. And thank you for also citing our model feminist state, as we call it, Ekiti State in this. But let me now change gear a little bit. I want to come to Kiki Mordi. I think we've all celebrated the excellent work that you've been doing in the last couple of years. Thank you. Thank you. And just wanted to ask you, what are some of the practical ways do you think in which we can harness the creative energies of young people to transform the governance landscape in Nigeria?
I think realistically, we can't achieve much if we don't listen to the young people. They have this fresh energy that is very easy to lose in the fight when you're always in the middle of chaos, in the middle of advocating for a thing that you're so passionate about. It's very easy to lose that energy. But young people, they have that insight and they have that context that we don't quite have sometimes. And as government agencies, we definitely need to listen to young people without shutting them down. The media is now so dynamic that social media is a huge form of media on its own, and we have artists, we have filmmakers, and we have different media practitioners just blowing off of social media alone. And then we can't take that for granted. I think the government should not take any form of media for granted when it comes to expression of young people. There is a lot that we can learn from listening to them, and we cannot just we shouldn't just more than listen. We should do more than listen to them. Rather, we should encourage them and we should invest in them. I've seen that the government did a lot of show of support for young people in tech, and we see the returns that tech has brought into our country, billions of naira coming in, and that's just to show how much we can achieve if we actually do more than just listen to young people and actually invest in them. The young people have a role, have an advocacy, have a way that they express themselves. In fact, sometimes it's even TikTok videos. We shouldn't take that for granted. They're saying the same thing that we're saying. We all want the same thing. We all want equality for women, and we want that equality to cut across healthcare and every other sector. So yes, that's what I think that it should. And lastly, I would say, as a media person who has worked both in traditional media and non-conformist media, I think that there is a partnership that can come off from traditional media coming to new media and just being there for issues when it comes to issues that directly affect women.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me now turn to another young superstar. Where is she? Buki. Do you agree? Do you agree with Kiki, and what would you like to add?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Kiki. I think one thing we need to take into consideration is the fact that we have a youthful population. The median age in Nigeria is 18 years old. And every time we program, I think we forget to program with that in mind, that that's the largest group within your country. And if you're not programming for them, if you're not including them, then you have issues and you have problems. And we're going to continue to see that. And that we also need to reach young people at scale. Because currently, organizations like mine are filling the gap, but we're not going to get to scale. So you're not going to be able to address the issue around prevention unless we're able to, one, review FLHE in order for it to be comprehensive. Because currently what you have is a curriculum that's not integrated very well, which teachers skip it because they don't feel comfortable teaching HIV, or they don't even talk about gender and power, and they don't talk about gender equality. So we need to review that curriculum, make it more comprehensive in order for young people to be able to access it as well. I think one of the things that is also important, apart from what Kiki said, is, and I think I'm just also going to add to what Dr. Sama is saying, but I don't think anyone has mentioned it yet, is the issue of investing money into our problems. Because one of the things that we saw during COVID was that, the government cut the money going to the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. And that's what's funding the primary healthcare system in Nigeria. So, and if we're not investing in our primary healthcare system, how are young people going to be able to get access to services? How are we going to increase access to antenatal? How are we going to increase health-seeking behaviors? And I think what we're seeing is that some people are trying to fill the gaps, but we need the government to make that commitment. We need domestic resource mobilization, and we need to challenge our governments. We're seeing cuts in healthcare, we're seeing cuts in education, We're not seeing enough investments in being able to provide access to GBV services. We're not investing in what works in terms of prevention. Right now, when we talk about GBV prevention in Nigeria, we're talking about community sensitization. We're talking about really basic things, but what works in terms of prevention for us to be able to do it at the scale? Because right now our response system is not strong enough to be able to respond to that. And then the last thing I'm going to say is in terms of opportunities. I think one of the things we need to engage with, and it's happening already, but we need it for everyone in this room, is the constitutional review. And I think we all really need to engage with that process, and more needs to be done to get the general public involved, to be able to hold accountable. Because currently what we're seeing is that the conversations are happening in silos. And until we bring in a critical mass and bring in more young people to that conversation, we're going to keep having an issue. The truth of the matter is that the COVID recovery plan for Nigeria is gender blind. It is not gender responsive, it is not gender sensitive. How do we push our government to see the gendered impacts of COVID and be able to respond in that way in terms of social protection, in terms of healthcare? And that's really quite important. So those are the things I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Buki. And let me also turn to another dynamic and powerful voice, Aisha. I think we listen a lot to you. Are you being heard? What do you see are some of the critical governance challenges, and particularly security governance as well, that need to be addressed going forward as part of our recovery efforts?
Thank you so much. I was so into the moment of listening to her, and I was quite carried away. Good afternoon, everyone. I think part of the things we have, honestly, is that we have issue of supply of governance. We don't have supply of good governance the way we should have. Like Dr. Obi Ezekwesile would always say, governance is of two sides, the demand and supply side. And first of all, we do not have the supply side being given, and at the same time also, we do not have the demand side. Demand side in such a way, people do not understand that they have a right to make demands, and really it's affecting almost everything. And we have a situation, we have a population that is not as educated as it should be. And I always say that democracy without education is a disaster, and we need to have more people educated. When people are educated, they will have a right, they will know what their rights are, and they will know that they have a right to make those demands and also to be heard. We heard what Kiki said. It will be disastrous for us as a nation not to listen to the young people. We must understand that our young people have intelligence, they have technology, they have social media, they have creativity, and they're not ready to stay the way we stayed. And we're waiting. We're told that we're leaders of tomorrow, and we believed it. And we're here today, and we are not leaders. We are not even allowed to be leaders. They do not want that. They know they're leaders of today, and they're ready to take it on. We saw what happened with the NSAS protest. We saw amazing young people coming out and, literally telling us that Nigeria can be the great nation that we expect it to be. But we weren't there for them. We didn't stand with them. We didn't listen. The government didn't listen. Rather, it brought in violence and meted out violence on them. These are young people who ordinarily, we've not given them the enabling environment for them to thrive. And they have found niches within this hostile environment. They are thriving in those niches. And what do we have? Instead of the government to continue to give them enabling environment, the government rather came hard upon them. And so that becomes very difficult. So when we are talking about HIV and all of that, they won't listen. Because most time we do not listen to them. As the older generation, I think the best thing we can do for this country is to really listen to our young people, to listen to what they're saying, and not just look at them as if, oh, you're young, you don't know anything. They know a whole lot. They know a whole lot of what this world has that we don't even know. We listen and we stayed on, and here we have this country. The least we can do is to continue to fight to make a difference in Nigeria. And also, I would like to point out a very important issue in terms of gap that we have. Is this financial literacy and people being financially independent, especially with women. Earlier on, Dr. Salma said something about women not accessing the antenatal care, right? Yeah, the ANC. They are not assessing it, not because they do not believe in it, but because most times their husbands don't have the money to send them there. And what do? They stop them from going. I grew up in the northern part of the country, where before you go out, you're supposed to ask your husband for permission. As a Muslim woman, you're supposed to ask your husband for permission before you go out. And so most of them, what they will do is that they will bring that in and say, no, you're not going anywhere. You can't assess it. Not because they think it is not good, but because they do not have the money, and they do not allow the women to be out there getting that financial independence. And before I round up, I would like us to look at the fact that in this country, there's a certain part of the country where you have a lot of children on the streets. The Almajiri children on the streets. The reason for me, personally, it's my opinion, I might be wrong, why this is so high up is because of the fact that women in the northern part of the country are not allowed to be as financially independent as they can be. So when they're thrown out of their houses, they're divorced, they have nowhere to take their children to. So they leave them on the streets, and they have to marry for them to be able to have food to eat. And so it goes on. Unlike in the southern part of the country, I'm a child of the north and the south. Unlike in the southern part of the country, where you have women thriving, coming out to sell ugu, do everything, sell crayfish and all of that, and ensure that the children keep getting the education that they need. Here, they're forced to be in Pada in the northern part of the country. They're forced to be in Pada. They're not allowed to work. Even those who are educated are not allowed to work, and it's a major issue. And these are the things that we really, really need to ensure that we change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Very well said. The need to listen to the solutions from young people and also economic empowerment of women across board. And in leaving no one behind, it's not just the young people, it's people living in rural communities as well. And I want to turn to Madam Rachel, who is representing rural women working at the grassroots level as well. And maybe you can say something about how women are exercising leadership at the grassroots level, and what are some of the development and security challenges that you're seeing in your environment right now.
Thank you very much being here with me. The Herders Farmers Crisis in Benue State has placed women in a very dire situation that if help was not available, they would have been incapacitated. But luckily enough for us, the UN Women came to our aid, and we have a project tagged Women Empowerment as a catalyst for prevention of HIV/AIDS amongst the IDPs and women with SGBV. So we targeted those people and we worked with them, and believe you me, it was awesome. Some women felt, even those of us who are HIV positive have been recognized, and we are being brought on board and being empowered to do something with our hands. So one woman even said, so people who are even positive cannot hide now because money is involved and they want to empower us. People came out. Women came out to say we are positive and we wanted help. So the women were reached and empowered. We trained them, we gave them skills, trained them in hair making, makeup, and tying or gele, soap making, and so many things. At the end of the day, they went home with things. Anything you want to do, things were bought for you as a startup kit for you to do that. And some small money was given to them. To us, 10,000 was small, but to them it was big. So what am I saying? That it is good to work with this group of people. We should not leave them behind. They know that they are being relegated to the back in the grassroots. But when you fish them out and you work with them, they become self-reliant. They have more confidence to send their children to school and even to look after their homes. They become household heads. Those women, most of them are household heads. So, as we did that to 100 women, we touched more than 100 people because they have a lot and lot of children at home to take care of. So we employ that. More of us go into that. It should not be a one-man show. People should join hands. Organizations should join hands and work with this group of people because it's not just good to give them medication, give them drugs to take ARV, and that is the end of it. Empower them so that they will be more powerful. They will trust in themselves, and they will be able to send their children to school. At the end of the day, they will know that they have done something. They have raised the status of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's about addressing not just the health, but the social impact and the empowerment aspect for women also living with HIV. Thank you very much. I want to now turn to Madam Binta, representing the private sector. One of the interesting observations or realities is that whilst we talk about underrepresentation of women in public life in Nigeria, in the private sector, at least women's representation on boards, we're not doing badly. In fact, Nigeria is above the global average of 17%, but 1 in 5 women on boards are women. And I'd like you to speak to that. What is responsible for that? What can we learn about what the private sector is doing that can be transferred to the public sector as well?
Thank you, ma'am. I think essentially it's just the political will and taking that quality decision to say this is what we're going to do. I recall when Lamido Sanusi was governor at the CBN, he took that creative approach to saying we need more women in senior management in the banking sector. And so it was by fiat, more or less. And then, of course, the banking sector came to the party, and you saw a lot more women then being invited onto the boards. Competent women, of course, that's the first thing. I must put that caveat there. You had to be sure these were women who could deliver the goods and who could do the job. And so that policy helped to see a lot more women get on boards in the banking sector in particular. And I think the private sector generally just took a cue from that and said, well, this is a good policy. It's obvious that women are stepping up. Women have what it takes and can do the job. We just need to give them a lot more opportunities and see them come and deliver what they've got on the inside. So I think it was just that deliberate policy to start with that quickly caught on in the private sector. What can the public sector do? Policy as well. We can say in some organizations or in the MDAs, the ministries, the agencies, and the parastatals, as long as there's a woman who's competent, who has risen through the ranks, or who has demonstrated capacity and an ability to do the job, then hey, by all means, let's open the door as well. I'm sure that will be a step in the right direction to see people begin to climb the ladder.
Thank you very much. Political will. So we need more of that in addition to the legislation. Now, I want to turn to one of our giants in the room, Dr. Obi Ezekwesile, who has run for political office, for the highest political office of the land. Congratulations. And I always say that any woman in Nigeria who runs, just by running, you're a winner because the landscape can be quite hostile. So the fact that you run alone makes you a winner. Let's hear from you about what it will take, Dr. Obi, to have more women at the leadership table based on your experience in running for office.
Well, thank you so much, Comfort. I dealt with Comfort earlier today because, it's at events I get to see her. And Comfort and myself come a long way back. BC is sitting right there by your side from our CDD days and the work that we all had to do. So I am sitting here and listening to all these wonderful women speak, and there's so much knowledge in the room. And that's the first thing that's important for us to always recognize, that we're not short of the knowledge that's important to solve our problems. I think that a key thing in improving the participation of women in a political process is to be better at collecting the knowledge and, sort of crystallizing the knowledge into the necessary sets of actions that are relevant for guiding the path. One thing that became very clear to me was that women often did not make a very strong connection between politics and governance, not even the very educated ones like you and I. So we are the class of people that Plato said we're being foolish. We sort of hold politics in contempt, and therefore we're governed by our inferiors. That's exactly what he said would happen. And so moving from that state of poor knowledge of the criticality of politics in determining governance, and ultimately in determining who benefits from the governance process, is one information asymmetry that exists that we must solve. And so these women that are here, I need you, every one of you, to understand that whatever it is that you're doing today, fundamentally, it is the politics of the country that determines how well you can achieve. I had my dear, my wonderful one, Buki, who is passionate about education and health issues, human development broadly. I had Kiki speaking about governance. But the truth is, there is no governance without politics. I used to be guilty of this, because when I was in government, as a minister, my dear friend Pauline knows that, we were of the group that sort of thought, we're technical people. We have no business with the politics. Leave the politics for these people, for the politicians to do. But politics is too important a matter to live with the politicians. Every one of you would need to understand the political economy of any subject area that is of importance to you. If you don't understand it, you're not going to work within the context in as much an effective way as possible. So that's one. Number two is that we're not doing well with using data. Data is in our favor as women. If you look at, we need to get more data, definitely, but we need to know that existing data in terms of women participation in politics can tell us a lot. And when we're not mining the data well, then we're not realizing the currency in the data of women's activities within the political space. It's definitely something that is crucial for us to do. The third part of it is the absence of real structures that support the process of political participation. So the men, in a very interesting way, have informally built a formal structure. And that informal build-up of a formal structure is that they had a leg up. And so they built some cabal system that operates at different levels. And so it exists, and they use it as a basis to determine the power allocations when they are thinking of politics. But the women just simply are there to support the process of the emergence of the decision that the cabal has already made. So you bring legitimacy to the actions of the cabal. And how does that happen? It happens in the way that I've seen, where the political parties are configured to be very masculine, entirely masculine. So it excludes the voice of women who are mostly the ones that actually are loyal party members. So the role division already selects what portion of the role the woman would be good to deliver on. And we have to change that. Now, why is this absolutely necessary? It's absolutely necessary because of all the things you're saying. Research has shown us that when women are part of the process of decision making, the decision outcomes are often more favorable to the cause of women and children. And so when they are outside of the space of the decision making, and yet they are screaming from somewhere and saying, hey, we're here, nobody's going to be listening. There's no incentive to listen. There's absolutely zero incentive to listen to women. So women must improve their political influence. The research that I did, 2019-2020, that's known as fixed politics, basically establishes that anyone who is expecting that our democracy, as currently configured, is ever going to deliver anything sensible, you got another thing coming. You've got to fix the politics of the country in order for women to stand the kind of chance that's necessary. And so we're stuck, but we can be unstuck. And it is possible when women can coalesce around this idea of the knowledge that we're finding. And my final point is that in looking at women and participation, and I mean, organizations like my former institution, the bank, the World Economic Forum, have done some analysis around this. So we know all these barriers that stand in the way of women, and we increasingly know what to remove, whether it is in terms of laws or policies or institutional barriers, or it's cultural norms and social norms and things like that. But one key thing that women need to be more aware of and be deliberate at addressing is this issue of impostor syndrome. You know, government can remove things, private sector can remove things, communities can remove barriers, but if a woman imposes a barrier on herself, who's going to remove it? It has to take the woman. Self-imposed barriers, where the women simply look at themselves and they think that leadership belongs to men. Meanwhile, science shows and evidence proves that leadership is gender neutral. Leadership is gender neutral. And we need to reinforce this message at a very early age with our girls. We need to get them to know that they possess all that it takes to be fantastic influencers, people who drive and persuade and direct. So, what should we do? What we should do is to be more deliberate. I have a friend of mine who said to me, nothing happens that's not made to happen. We want to get women in political representation, then you've got to make it happen. You can't simply hope that it happens. You actually take the steps that are necessary for it to happen. And so one of those steps is we decided that we don't want a replacement of poor leadership by men with poor leadership by women. Because then, what's the point in having that? So we decided that we're going to do a process of deliberate development of women leaders for the public sector. The truth is, Nigerians pay more attention to who they hire to run a grocery shop than they pay to who governs them at the local level, state level, or federal level. How can you do that? That's an anomaly. It's an aberration. So we have decided through the School of Politics, Policy and Governance to begin to prepare our women for public leadership. You give them the training so that they have the kinds of skill set, whether it be economics or trade or environment or security, or all the issues that go toward running a very vibrant and productive society. Our women will have it. So that when a woman is running for a House of Assembly comfort, what we want to see is that as the political process begins to exert more pressure on like Aisha quoting what I always say about supply side and demand side, when the electorate becomes so powerful and they are saying we are very discerning and we make a choice of the right people to lead us, when a woman candidate steps out there to speak for her position or her interest in being a lawmaker from Borno State or from Edo State or from Enugu State, when she speaks, everyone is going to say, can you gentlemen start going home? Because, we think we figured out who is going to solve our problem better. So that's why a deliberate development of their leadership is important for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to take on the point about how do women improve their political influence? What's the role of technology? How can we harness technology? We're already on the road to 2023, and we need to look at what we do differently to improve our influence as women.
So that's a good question. Technology is a tool that helps scale, is a tool that helps transparency. The way I see it is, it enables whatever you want to design. That's technology. Looking at women in leadership, looking at how they can leverage technology, even looking to our election, technology can provide us with transparency. It doesn't make sense why we have to still go to physically cast our votes when technology can enable that. And the government is supposed to lead by example, but they haven't done this. I would always cite the NIN registration issue. If ever there was a time for technology adoption and utilization of digital tools to be accelerated, it should be because of what happened last year with COVID and the lockdown. It was a great time to experiment, go digital with your records keeping, with the registration process, but they failed to do that. I have very little confidence in the government being at the forefront of leading these things. The private sector are the ones that have had to innovate despite the hurdles that have been set. Private organizations are the ones that have created solutions to these problems. We talk about ease of doing business. It doesn't exist. In Nigeria, we rank 131, and I feel like that is just on paper, because the reality is it's very uncomfortable to do business in Nigeria. And women in leadership is even more difficult. I'm looking at my sector. I work in a very male-dominated space. And the good thing with the women that have worked in my space is our results speak for itself, which is one thing I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of that. We have been made to face a lot of glass cliff and glass ceiling situations, and I'm happy that the women have really stepped up and done really well. So for technology, we need to embrace it, we need to adopt it as ourselves, and we need to be able to enable it, but I think we need to do it on an individual level and a private sector company-wide level. I don't think we should wait for the government to drive this. I don't believe they would. And hopefully we see it bring more transparency to the way the country is run, to politics, to even the implementation of different laws in the country.
I want to then now turn to, last but not the least, our very own Winnie Byanyima. Excellency, I want you to also share some thoughts with us. I think everyone has said it about how successful you have been in really advocating and helping to bring about some changes in Ekiti State. And it would be good for you to share with us what you see as the role of I'm calling it quiet diplomacy here, but as you said, it's not been very quiet. But what are the strategies that have been effective? Not doing everything frontally, but being able to bring about change all the same. And what can we learn from that as we also move forward around women's leadership going forward?
Thank you very much, my dear sister Comfort. I think those who have known me for a long time would laugh if you call my name busy and use the word quiet in the same sentence. And this is where I say welcome to Nigeria to my very, very dear friend and sister, Honorable Winnie Byanyima. I first met Winnie 25 years ago in Uganda. I was young then, not youngish, really young. She was young too, but older than me, so she was like a big sister, a mentor, and a really great friend. Honorable Minister, good afternoon, and everyone else up here, and all the sisters who are in the room. I think some of the lessons I've learned along the way are that as we go through our different transitions in life, our professional transitions and personal transitions, we find ourselves occupying different kinds of spaces, which gives us different capacities and abilities. There was a time when I could say I would find people like myself in the position I'm in now, diametrically opposed to all that I stood for, because they were the embodiment of poor governance, poor leadership, and definitely not the kind of role models I felt I wanted to be looking up to. And now I find myself in this position, the spouse of a governor, one of the leaders of the country, with certain expectations. And what I think about is the values that I'm supposed to bring to the position I'm in. The feminist values that have been a part of my life for so many years, and through which I traffic in the African women's movement, the Nigerian women's movement, and the global women's movement. And one question I keep asking myself is, how do I remain true to these values, and how do I remain accountable to this movement that I've been a part of most of my life? And so going into a space like Ekiti, being the wife of the governor of Ekiti State, one of the things that was most important to me was ensuring that charity begins at home. A lot of the work I've done in different parts of the continent, around in many different countries and beyond, ensuring that at least where we come from, we have a baseline to operate from. And that's why I made, for example, the issue of legal frameworks and policies an absolute priority. And now Ekiti State, thankfully, is a place where we have some of the most robust frameworks, legal and policy frameworks in Nigeria for gender equality and women's empowerment. I've been able to get 4 bills passed in the state. A bill on gender-based violence, a gender and equal opportunities bill, a HIV anti-discrimination bill, as well as a treatment, care, and protection of sexually abused minors bill. In addition, Ekiti State was the first state in Nigeria to domesticate the national gender policy. And we also were the first to have the sex offenders register and to begin naming and shaming of sex offenders. And so, following on from there, having these legal and policy frameworks in place, comes the responsibility of ensuring adequate implementation, which a number of speakers have raised. So I think the core of my message here is to do with political will and how I've experienced it. Political will is expressed through a number of ways. First of all, it's expressed through the amount of resources you are willing to invest in an issue. We need to continue to hold our federal government accountable and our state governments accountable on the issue of political will.
Whether we are talking about gender-based violence or HIV/AIDS or maternal and infant mortality, we have all the laws, we have all the policy frameworks, we have all the rhetoric. Throughout the month of March, people will come and give all kinds of speeches about the same issue. We need a demonstration of political will through the application of financial resources, human resources, technical resources, material resources. We cannot get anything done if we don't have strong institutions at federal and at state level that are sustainable. We cannot say we are interested in gender mainstreaming when you have no gender specialists. We cannot have a national machinery for gender like the Minister of Women's Affairs and Social Development that is the least funded of all the MDAs. And sometimes I've seen this happen when my husband first became governor of Ekiti. I've seen it happen. It's not a gist. Where the budget of the Minister of Women Affairs is likely to be a budget line for another ministry, i.e., and maybe my sister Obi might be able to identify with this, i.e., a budget line in the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Works, or Ministry of, so the entire budget for 1 year is a budget line in another MDA. We cannot get far if we do not insist on having institutions that are strengthened with all the resources and the capacity building that is required. And I think my last point is to do with how we then continue to use these different opportunities and spaces. I'm in a space now where I feel the least I can do is try and mobilize others who I share the same space with, for them to think differently and use the spaces differently. That, I believe, is a contribution to an existing movement. We do have a strong women's movement in Nigeria, even though we have, different challenges like everywhere else. But we have a movement that has come to a consensus around certain issues, around governance, around peace and security, around women's health, women's economic empowerment and livelihoods, education of girls, and so on. But what we need to do is ensure that we can translate this movement building into political power. And so I'd like to encourage my sisters to keep their eye on the ball. It's not enough for us to talk about political engagement, as my sister Obi has said. We need to ensure that we get into political power. No man is going to give us any kind of power, and I should know, because as sympathetic as my husband is, as feminist as he is not operating in isolation. There are other forces he has to contend with. After being part of the political machinery for my husband's campaign or in the state, going out mobilizing in the sun, in the rain, and so on, when it comes time to give out positions, I see his advisors going in and out of his office with files under their armpits. And what is in those files? The names of people who they want to put in positions. And so what I then resorted to doing was to waylaying them. Like, come, bring that file, let me see. They will say, Excellency, we have put women. I'll say, let me see the woman you have put. Because they'll put in women, but these women will be their, relatives or, girlfriends and so on. So we need to ensure that we continue to engage with these mainstream political processes. I will continue to do whatever I can to ensure that I use this space as judiciously as possible to be accountable, because when I go, somebody else will come in, but hopefully I would have done enough for them to see that this space can be used in transformative ways as well. Thank you.
Translate the movement building into political power. We don't have much time, so we really have our work cut out. I think for those of you who noticed earlier, we changed the program slightly because initially we wanted the Honorable Minister of Women's Affairs to speak first. We thought it was important, and she mentioned it, to actually listen to the voices in the room. So thank you, Honorable Minister, for listening. And now I'd like to hand over the mic to you to share your thoughts and observations before we invite our special guest, the ED of UNAIDS, for her observations as well. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Comfort. My dear sister, our special guest, Ms. Winnie Byanyima, most welcome again to Nigeria, Executive Director, UNAIDS. My dear sister Ula of UNFPA, Erasmus, UNAIDS, Your Excellency, my dear sister in whom we are well pleased, she is really, really pushing and leading among our wives of governors. Name it, gender-based violence, she's chairing the committee, ensuring that women get their rightful place, fighting all forms of injustice against women. I want to salute all these great women on the round table. I listened carefully to all your contributions, and I'm happy as you speak out your hearts. I congratulate you on this day as we celebrate the International Women's Day, and for all your contributions in different forms, in different ways, to support women, particularly those with HIV/AIDS, the vulnerable among us, and those that have no voice. Nigeria is such a large country with so much, and yet, because of the absence of women in decision-making, millions of Nigerians are suffering for no cause. I salute all of you for your doggedness, for your resilience. I acknowledge in particular the coalition, leaders of coalition of those with HIV/AIDS, and those living with disabilities. I salute my dear sister, former Minister Obi Ezekwesile. I'm happy she has realized her past mistake because they had a group during Obasanjo, when I was Minister of State. They had a group that they called themselves the Technocrats, including El-Rufai. That was their group. But now, Technocrats. But now they've realized their mistake, thank God. They are now full-fledged politicians. And the struggle continues. We cannot rest on our oars. We cannot give up. We will continue to challenge. And sometimes when I speak, they feel as if I'm not part of the government. I said, we must fight injustice. You need women. Women are the ones that vote you into office. From the top to the chairman and councillors at local government level. It is women. And we have the highest population, and our children are the ones suffering, and you want us to keep quiet? No. We will continue drumming, talking until things change for the better. I salute my sister Aisha. I listen carefully to what you've said, which is very true. And most of the women in the North are highly educated, but they are denied their rights. I salute what my sister has said, Dr. Salma, the health situation and the health challenges we are facing. Well, COVID-19 has exposed everything. Again, everything about COVID-19, particularly at the onset. You've seen the letter of my protest. I copied you, I copied everyone. It was never gender sensitive. And yet, women are the caregivers, women are whatever. I encourage the young ones. And I want to tell you that I am 100% with you. We have no choice but to listen to you. Again, the NSAS has exposed that. And we are paying dearly for it. It's unfortunate that I'm the only minister sitting here, but I want to tell you I've taken notes. I will share all that we've discussed here with the Minister of Health, with the Minister of Youth and Sports, humanitarian, name it, those that are directly affected. Because until we learn to listen, we'll continue to face the problems we're facing. Until we learn to get to do things right, we'll continue to suffer for what we are going through now. Again, we must unite. We have no choice but to unite. We have the numerical strength. If we keep talking in silos, we will hardly get the result we are all fighting for. We need to get ourselves together, unite, and try to speak with one voice. I know it's difficult, but I have said it over and over. And for politicians, even in my state, as long as you are a woman and you come out under any other political party, I support you. I've supported women in other parties in my state. And I say I will continue to do that because the number of women in our state and National Assembly is too insignificant. If a woman is good enough, and I know she can deliver, I will support her. Irrespective of party. That is the only way. And if we unite like that, we have the numerical strength. We must do something deliberate in order to change the status quo. I commend Obi for setting up the institute where you are training future leaders. We need that mentoring, we need that, and we must put aside personal interests. We must be objective. If we don't put aside personal interests, then we have the strength. And united we stand, divided we fall. If we are united to speak with one voice, we can be able to sit and decide. We must bargain. We must bargain on the round table. If we don't do that, we'll be left alone screaming up there, as always. They will go around, divide us, give us peanuts. By now, we should know the right leaders that should lead us and the ones that are sensitive to our cause. We know them. And time will come that we will decide on the table. We must bargain for it. And I pray that our youths will stand by us so that, because women and youths, we control the votes. If we are able to get ourselves together and speak with one voice, irrespective of any political or selfish interests, we'll be able to make a difference. Objectivity, we are fighting for good governance. And we must bargain in order to get what we want. Leaving it like that, no. We are working on the constitutional review. We are working on the party's constitutional review. We are reaching out to them because that is the starting point. There is no way we can succeed in getting more women into any political office without the presence of more women at the party structure. That is the starting point. If we are able to get through that, I had a team, the National Democratic Institute are also supporting the ministry on that. UN Women were working together on that, Women in Politics, and we formed a very strong committee that we are reaching out. We have some of the men that believe in the cause of women, and that's why we honor them, we support them as he for she. If you recall the first sets of governors, I gave and acknowledged and honored them. In 2019, the governor of Ekiti was among them, the governor of Lagos, the governor of Kaduna, the governor of Kwara. These are governors that have shown clearly that they are leaders that can make a difference. They are leaders that believe in the cause of women. I therefore want to urge you, don't let your spirit not be dampened. The struggle continues. It's not easy. Even America, that seems to be at least, that has been leading for the past 200 years, the father of democracy, only recently were able to make it by having a female vice president. America, that talks big about democracy. Yes, 200 years. I strongly believe, and I can see light at the end of the tunnel, if only we can put our differences, unite, and believe in the cause of women in order to make change. For the men that we will support, it must be men who have shown deliberate efforts in supporting women issues. We have the statistics, we have the records of what they are doing in all the various states. The good work they are doing will speak for them. And when the time comes, we will speak. And then we will bargain on the round table. I commend you, and I want to encourage Kiki and all the young ones here that I am fully with you, and we will do the work and the talk together. By the grace of God, we will see light at the end of the tunnel. Finally, I want to talk to my dear sister and to appeal. Before this appointment, I was the chairman of the NACA. And I believe that you can support women through capacity building and strengthening the leadership to address the inequality amongst adolescents, the vulnerable groups, and our orphans. These are the areas that I will appeal to you, and I know, seeing you, I can feel the pulse of a true mother, that this vulnerable group, the orphans, the adolescents, and those with disabilities definitely need more of capacity building to strengthen the problems of leadership that we're facing. Once again, I sincerely thank you for giving us all the time today to be with us and to listen to us. And my dear sister Irelu, keep up doing the good work. It will speak to you at the right time. Great Nigerian women, once again, congratulations. God bless you. I am with you, and together we will keep pushing until we get there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, and thank you for your commitment and your passion and for really bringing women in Nigeria together, being able to work with your colleagues in government, with women in civil society, women across sectors. I think Nigeria is blessed to have you as Honorable Minister at this moment. Thank you for all you do. And now, dear colleagues, we have the opportunity to hear from our special guest of honor today, the Executive Director of UNAIDS, who herself has been a strong feminist, or is, not has been, is a strong feminist, has been a strong advocate for women's rights in different fields, and who can also share some of her experiences. Would like you to also maybe give us some of the lessons that you've learned from Uganda as well, that Nigerian women can take on board as we look to the future, to 2023 and beyond. Some of these issues around political representation, around dealing with all the challenges that you've heard. I think this is a great moment to hear from someone like you who has been in the trenches and who can also give some message of hope to us. So, Executive Director, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Comfort. Indeed, in this room, I'm here as a sister, a very honored sister. And I just want to say thank you so much, Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, my sister, Pauline Cullen. I've said it wrong. Okay. I really thank you so much for inviting me to celebrate, to mark International Women's Day with the women of Nigeria, with my sisters, and the men too. And I also really feel so pleased, so happy and delighted that my sister BC, the First Lady of Ekiti State, flew in here to be with us and with me. Thank you so much. My colleagues from the United Nations system sitting here with me, and distinguished women, sisters of Nigeria. I just want to ask these press people to, how do you say in Nigeria? To, I beg that they put the cameras here and we talk together. And the cameras are in my way. I want to see the sisters. So anyway, they are recording. So I've learned a lot. I have enjoyed this discussion so much. It's energized me. I'm going to go away feeling strong and positive about the African women's movement. I mean, each one of you knows deeply one area of women's rights. You articulated it so well. And for me, what I want now to share is a little bit of connecting some dots here, because I'm in such agreement and respect of everything that you have said. I want to connect three things. One, the issue of women's leadership that Obi spoke so eloquently about, and my sister, the minister, too. The second one is about our bodies, our health, women's bodies. And on that, I want to connect it to emergencies, pandemics, HIV and COVID. For me, it is somewhere in Rome, old men of 80 years and plus who make the rules about everything to do with my body. And those rules are tough and restrict our lives in many ways. When I was 15 in school, secondary school, I remember one girl, Mary, became pregnant. And she was taken out of the dormitory once they discovered the head of the school and the sisters. She had to sleep somewhere else, I don't know where. And within another day, she was whisked up, condemned for life. She went back to her village. Nobody ever heard of Mary again. She had gotten pregnant. Now, we had seen her going around the teacher's house, one of the male teachers. She had been around him too much. And it was rumored that it was that male teacher who made her pregnant. Well, when Mary left, the man never left. The teacher stayed. Only at the end of the term, we heard that he's not returning. He's going to teach at another school in another part of the country. That is what he suffered, a transfer. Mary was condemned for life. She must have had her baby in some village. She never went beyond that class. That is the rule about illicit sex for a woman. There's a high price you pay. If you have sex outside the rules, the punishment can be life-changing. There's no punishment for a man there. So many of the rules about our bodies have got such sanctions. And if you dare to break those rules, your life is changed forever. Many of our girls today face that. But that's not the only thing. You look at how our health is prioritized in budgets, leave alone emergencies, in normal times. In this continent, around the world, let's talk about the world, it's a problem of all women. 808 women die every day giving birth due to some pregnancy or childbirth related issue. 808. That is 1 woman per 2 minutes is dying because of pregnancy. Most of this can be avoided. But our governments put too little money into our health. If you think about the women who live in the villages, like where I grew up, women who dig with the hoe, women who cook in a kitchen with firewood, by the time they are 60, their backs are bent, their lungs are poisoned, their eyes can't see. But go to the hospital and see how many specialized clinics do you find, where do you find women with all these similar symptoms of backs, of lungs, of eyes damaged by smoke? How much do you see specialized services for them? Hardly. Before this COVID hit us, most of our countries here in sub-Saharan Africa were indebted and getting more and more in debt, approaching debt distress levels. Quite a number of them were making debt repayments that were several times higher than the total health budget. Where were the debts coming from? They borrowed a lot of money to make roads, to take exports. They borrowed money to build bridges and ports. We need all of that. But now when it's time to pay, what do they cut? They cut health, which women need a lot. They cut education of our children. So these expenditures that are so important for our lives and our children were reducing as debt repayments were mounting. I'm talking about our bodies still. Our bodies are not a priority. Our bodies are regulated by institutions, traditional and religious, that are dominated by men. They put a lot of sanctions around our bodies. And when it comes to paying for our health, they put so little down for paying for our health. This is the situation we live in. This is the powerlessness of women. If I had the power, I would have sent that teacher packing first, and I would have kept Mary at school, if I had the power. But the power is elsewhere. So this is the connection with power, that so much about our lives is regulated by institutions that men control, and they make those decisions as they see the world, as they want the world to be. Coming now to pandemics, HIV and COVID. You just heard it with HIV. In this country, in your country, and similar to all our countries here in sub-Saharan Africa, when you look at who is being newly infected every year, 2 times, 3 times, even up to 5 times, the numbers are women more than men, girls more than boys. Why? Why is it mostly girls and women getting newly infected? It's to do with discrimination. It's to do with this non-prioritization on the lack of opportunity, lack of a voice. It's girls unable to say no to sex, and their no is accepted. It's young women in relationships where they cannot control the decisions about their sex, sexual relations. It is about girls who don't have a chance to be in school, who are out there in unsafe environments. They are not in a classroom. They are herding goats. They are running errands. They are farming. They're in places where there's no adult to protect them. It's girls who fall prey to those who should protect them, fall prey to teachers, fall prey to relatives in the same home. So it is about discrimination. It is about violence in sexual relations. It is about a culture of tolerating violence, tolerating discrimination, tolerating inequality. So, if this is the situation about our bodies, if this is the situation about our health, if we want to turn it around, that's why I say we connect the dots. It's about our lives being a priority in decision making. I wanted to connect it to pandemics and epidemics. Every time there's an emergency, whether it's a health emergency, an epidemic, whether it is an environmental emergency, like an earthquake or a flood, whether it is a conflict, a war that has erupted and people are displaced, always in these situations, women are called upon to protect the family, to make the family survive, to find food, to find water. Go to any emergency camp and see. I've been to Borno State. I used to run an emergency response there. Go see who you find in the line, lining up for food, for a hygiene kit, for water. It is women. It's women. See the numbers in the camp. Almost 80% women and children. So you always see that women are left to pull the family together, to keep the community going, to make sure that there is sanitation, there is this, there is that. The burden of survival rests with women. But at the same time, that's the same with epidemics. When you hear this COVID, not only did women across this continent lose their livelihoods because their places of work were shut, they couldn't go out to work, they couldn't find food, they couldn't earn a little money on the road if they were selling something on the road. They lost their livelihoods, their incomes. But at the same time, they had to go back home and feed families. They were asked to find water, to keep washing hands. You see how many times we are washing hands. But they were fetching the water. They didn't have a tap. They had to find food. And all this, when the help is coming, it is for people. It is not looking at who is doing what. It is gender neutral. It's help for everybody. Social protection came. We heard, I was hearing, that in this country, they have given people relief from paying electricity bill. Oh, great. That is okay if you are a civil servant living off electricity. But if you're burning a kerosene lamp and you fetch your water and you cook with firewood, what's an electricity bill for you? So you found that social protection, safety nets created were not created with a woman's burden in mind or the poorest woman in many parts of the world. I'm not sure what was going on here, but I'm talking very generally about here, Asia, all over the world. We saw safety nets kicking in, but not always reflecting the real needs of a poor woman. So coming to HIV and COVID, with HIV, we see the higher vulnerability of women and girls. And I salute women for standing up and fighting. My God, I grew up in a country where AIDS decimated us, but it is women stood and fought. It is women like her with their organizations, ICW, who formed networks around the world to raise the voice of women. So I salute you, but I say that pandemics worsen the situations of women and girls, just like all crises. And when they do, we need to tell the governments that, look here, we are all suffering, but we are suffering differently. We are facing different vulnerability, and we have different roles to play that need to be supported. So it brings me back to this last point of politics and power. We have to politicize these issues. I want to take the issue of sexuality out of the hands of religious leaders, yes, and put it in my own hands. Hey, I know the press like this kind of story. But that's the fact that, you see, if the religions could have women at the table also in equal numbers, then the rules might be the same for all of us. Then the man and the woman will be punished the same for the same crime. You look in my world of HIV. We are many women, but there are women with different problems. We have women whom we call sex workers. I have to say it here, I'm sorry. Sex workers can be seen as morally not correct. I don't make a judgment. But when in our world we know that they're highly vulnerable to HIV and they transmit it to so many people because of the work they are doing. So if we don't give them a chance to go for treatment, what happens? They spread it very far to many, and they die, which is also not good. They have children, they have families. So we say from a health perspective that everybody should have their right to health. Everybody. So as I talk with you, women of Nigeria, I think we need an agenda for ourselves. We need to look at issues as issues of women in all their diversity. And we need to set the agenda ourselves and seek power, politicize these issues, ask men to support them, or deny them votes if they don't support the women's agenda. It's about agenda setting. It's about shaping the table. I end with the point that my sister Obi made, which is about bringing new leadership and new issues and reshaping politics. Let me say that we've been doing this for a very long time, and we have to keep doing it. When I met BC here, why had she come to Uganda? She had built a Pan-African organization building women's leadership, tapping women at an early stage in their 20s and 30s, and helping them to build the values and the feminist agenda that would change Africa. That's the kind of work we've been doing. Because it's not only political leadership, it's leadership, transformative feminist leadership in every space, in politics, in civil society, in science and academia, in business. We want leaders who lead differently, isn't it? That is the thing. And who lead and understand diversity and understand that we are not homogeneous. We have different cultures, religions, vulnerabilities. We need to respect all of them, be less judgmental, but just honor every woman and fight for her autonomy. Starting with this bodily autonomy, I feel sad that up to now, we are afraid to make issues about our reproductive health rights firm on the agenda of politics. We will not win unless we fight on them. So I want to conclude and say, my sisters, that I met a man who inspired me. It's not just about women, it's about men. I was recently in Congo. I met a man called Professor Mkenge. I'm sure you've heard of him. He won a Nobel Prize for his fight against violence against women and girls in Congo. I talked with him. I was excited. I said, Dr. Mkenge, we have found something in HIV. We have now a tablet which, if a woman takes, then if she is raped or her husband forces himself on her when she doesn't, she won't get HIV. It's called a pre-exposure prophylaxis for women. And you can take it and you can be protected. And I said, don't you think that will help us very much so that we don't have HIV transmission in this area? He looked at me and he didn't look very excited. He said, Winnie, I don't think this is useful. I said, why? He said, well, women are not waiting to be raped. Why should she take the tablet? When it happens to you, it's when you don't expect it. So I was a little bit naive in my thinking. But then it's what he said after that touched my heart. He said, Winnie, you and others must join this fight and make it unacceptable in our societies, in our communities, that we must make sexual violence unacceptable. Violence against women must be unacceptable. This is the solution, not your tablet, he said. Okay, we will still make the tablet available. But this man called me to fight violence against women, and it's a man. It's a man. We need more men like that. We need to fight for our bodies. Yeah. So I thank you so much, and I wish you all the best in your struggle with your constitutional review. Bring us to support you. I hope you could win a quota for your power of women in the political structures. I wish you all the best.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Edie. Lots of food for thought. I think all of us take a lot from this about how we're going to strategize to address some of these issues. Sisters, we're almost at the end of our conversation, and Ula has the very easy task of giving us a summary and and concluding remarks from our session. So Ula, over to you.
Thank you very much, Comfort. I think it's an ungrateful task to be speaking after three inspirational women. Honorable Minister, my dear friend, Under Secretary General, it's a joy to meet you. You're most welcome in Nigeria. It's the first time I meet you, Governor. It's a pleasure. I have been sitting here listening in also to all of you. And I don't think we need a summary. I think we just heard perfect summaries of what needs to be done. So I think what is left for me is basically to maybe just say some thank yous. First of all, thank you to everyone who came here today. I think every time we meet and we share experiences, we become stronger. Every time we do that, that move to come away from a movement and moving that into political platforms becomes stronger. And that means we are on the right trajectory. I do think we need to spend a little bit of time on the foundation, and I think it was really put so eloquently by the UNAIDS Executive Director, because a lot of the power dynamics comes down to bodily autonomy. And us being able to decide what happens to our own bodies. When women are not able to do that, that piece of empowerment and self-agency becomes very difficult to reach. And that comes all the way down to access to reproductive health care, to making sure that women have access to family planning, safe deliveries, are protected from gender-based violence. but also that we make sure that we do not forget that HIV is still very prevalent and it needs to be fully integrated in reproductive health services. We have to get to that point. We need to create that platform. And we need to start thinking about, I think, and that I know in Nigeria, with the minister that you have, I have no doubt that we're going to see things happening here. We need to think about how do we reach all the women who cannot read and write? How do we get to all the women who doesn't have access to technology? All the women who doesn't have their own phone? How do we build that capacity? How do we reach them and empower them? We have to find our way there. I've been sitting here again, listening and learning. I think Nigeria has shown, just by the virtue of the global leadership roles that Nigeria are holding just now, that Nigeria is the country who has the capacity to really change the way we think about how we create political will. How do we get to that point where we can hold politicians accountable and let our joint voices that we raise in unity because we stand behind each other? How do we get to that point? Because when we get to that point, I am convinced that Winnie's, sorry I'm using your first name, but that girl she knew as a child will not be punished, because all the women in her village will catch her and they will support her and they will make sure that she gets back to school and that she holds her own future. So thank you to all. Thank you to this amazing panel. I've been today with women leaders who I can only hope that one day I'll be able to reach the same level of inspiration for the next generation. Thank you for your time. And I would just want to end by saying, I choose to challenge everyone that thinks women do not have a right in equality at the decision-making table. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ula. So it's just left for two things. One is our photo. No, you can't go, Dr. Obi. We're going to take a group photo just so we capture this very important moment. So I'm going to invite our distinguished panelists to please step down so we can get everyone else up here to join us for the photo. And refreshments are also outside at the end of this. Thank you.